sparkling day. Welcome to Porchlight Letters podcast number 2385. Our question we're tackling today is, how do I share rediscovered stories with my family? I love this. So don't do something like, right, we are all going to come together on this day at this time and we are going to share stories. No, let it happen naturally. So that's all I can say. A story only lives when it is shared. So you got to share it, and there's different ways you can share it. We talked about this the other day. You can write it, you can do a video about it, you can physically share documents that tell part of the story, look through photo albums and have the stories come out that way. As long as you are recording the stories in some way, there is different ways that you can share as well. So simple storytelling makes history accessible. Dense reports overwhelm people. If you start going, oh, look, we've got this birth certificate here for our third great-grandfather, and this is who he was, and this is who his parents was, and blah, 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 blah. It's going to go, and they're all going to be sitting there going, can we go home now? I need to go home now. This is too much. No. So a short narrative about a great-grandparent's journey is easier to absorb. Did you know that your great-grandfather, blah, 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 blah. And then you've got visual formats invite engagement. Photo albums with captions or timelines help relatives connect faces to stories. So if you just go, hey, look, I just finished this photo album. And if you've got something like Forever, which we use extensively, if you have Forever, you can actually create albums per person. So for each person you treat, and in the thing you can put in the description, you can put who this person is, when they're born, when they died, who they got married to, who their spouse was, who their children were, and some little stories about them. And you can also create documents and upload those into that person's album as well, so that they are there. And then you can share those albums with people. But wait, that could get a little bit dense when you are throwing stuff in there. But it's also a good place too to put documents, like scans of birth certificates, death certificates, baptismal records, christening records, marriage certificates, death certificates, probate records, military records, census reports. The list just goes on and on and on. So what you can do is, create photo albums with captions or timelines that help relatives connect faces to stories. And if they want to learn more about that particular person, then you can lead them, just start with a small album, then you can lead them over to the bigger album where everything is. Drip feed them the information. Informal conversations keep stories alive. Sharing discoveries during gatherings creates natural curiosity. A casual story over dinner can spark more interest than a formal presentation. Remember, formal presentation, be here at this date and time and blah, 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 blah. And then you stand up the front with your PowerPoint ready or your slideshow ready or whatever that's on the TV, and you start talking through. Yeah, no. Casual. And don't sit there like you got ants in your pants waiting for somebody to, sit there and I really wish I could butt in here somewhere. Yeah, don't do that. Allow the conversation to flow and have it come up naturally. Somebody's going to say something at some point that's going to spark, not the story you want to tell them. It may spark a different story, and that's okay. As long as you are sharing discoveries in a casual way where you are drip feeding the information to relatives and things, then they become more interested. Relating past to present builds relevance. Connecting an ancestor's migration to modern family identity helps relatives see themselves in the story. You can also, if somebody turns around and says, oh, we just found this place, and you go, oh, what street was that on? And it could be like you're busy having a conversation with the person next to you at the dinner table, or with the person next to you on the couch, wherever you're sitting there having this casual conversation, the family's gathered in the room, and you hear a name that is familiar to you. And you go, oh, excuse me, woman, what was that you just said about McIntosh Street? And they turn around and say, oh, we just saw this house on McIntosh Street. It's this number here. Really? And all of a sudden you're interested, tell me more about the house. And you get them to tell them more about the house, because it could be that they may not know that maybe one of their great-grandparents grew up in that house, because you had just finished researching it in a census report. And you're going, is it number da-da-da? And they go, yes, it is. And I'm like, and you'll be like, oh, do you realize that your third great-grandfather was born in that house? Now all of a sudden, that house becomes, I mean, it really happens. Don't turn around and say, oh, that doesn't happen. It does happen. It really happens. But when it does happen, it's magic. It is so magical. And all of a sudden, oh, yeah, we just bought this house. We're closing it today. And somebody will go, oh, where is it? And they'll go in this street here. And you suddenly hear that street name. And you're sort of like, hang on, what was that street you just mentioned? Well, your great grandfather lived on that street in the 1950s. What number are you at? And they're like, they tell you the number, and you're like, one moment. You pull out your phone, you pull up your family tree on there. You go to that census report that the great grandfather was in, and you find the number and go, oh my gosh, what number did you say? That's the same house the great granddad lived in. I mean, it does happen. Don't tell me it doesn't happen. It does happen. There are so many wild and weird stories out there. There is actually a book that is called In the Footsteps of Our Ancestors. I think that's what it's called. No, In Search of Our Ancestors. And In Search of Our Ancestors was actually a PBS show that was on, and there was a book written that accompanied the show. So the book told some of the stories that were not told on the show. But these are all about wild and wacky things that are, as Mark Twain said, truth is stranger than fiction. That's why fiction has to make sense. There are some strange things out there that happened to people as they were researching their family trees that they cannot explain. The only explanation they have is that their past, their dead relatives, their dead ancestors led the way, spiritually guided them to that way. There were different signs and they ended up going to the right places and stuff. There was a story where somebody in the family, unbeknown to them, had purchased a house that their second great grandfather was born in. And it was recently discovered by another member of the family, who had no clue that these people had just bought this house. I can't remember if it was siblings, nieces, nephews, but there was a family connection there. They were unaware that this couple had bought this house, and they had recently found the second great grandfather on a census in 1950. No, not 1950, on the 1920 census, that had lived in that house as a child. And this couple went and purchased this house. It is I thought that gives me chills. That is such a cool story. And they happened to be at a family gathering of some sort where everybody was present. And somebody asked this couple about their house that they had bought and asked them where it was. They said it was on this particular street. The person who was doing the research just heard the street name. They said it sounded like it had been yelled in their ear. And they stopped their conversation, turned to the couple and said, where? And they turned and they said this, and they said, well, do you realize that in 1920, your great grandfather lived on that street? They're like, oh, what street? And they asked them what street number it was. So she pulls out her phone, has a look on her family tree thing, tells them the number, and the couple's face just drops. They're like, it turned out that was the house that they had just bought. So don't tell me it doesn't happen, because it does. This didn't happen to me. I wasn't witness to this. It was one of these stories that you hear about, that just one of those stranger than just strange true stories that you hear that you cannot possibly make up, because it would just be too weird and too wacky and too out there. So relating past to present builds relevance. Now everybody wanted to go over and do a big welcome to your new home party at this, and now they wanted to learn more about their second great grandfather because they had lived in this house. This couple wanted to know more about their second great grandfather because they were now moving into a house that he had lived in as a child. It happens. Repetition strengthens memory. Stories told often become part of family culture. As you're going to be repeating these stories as you drip feed more information into the stories. Oh, do you remember last Christmas when we were all sitting around the table and I was telling you about, Granny Smith, I was going to say Granny Smith, that's an apple. About Granny, I don't know, some great grandmother. Sorry, brain's on a phrasing thing. And I told you that we had learned this story about blah, 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 blah. We found out some more about that story, and you tell them a little more details. Then the next family you give them a little more. So you're constantly repeating these stories. They become part of family culture, but each time you tell them, you add in more details of stuff that you've just found. It makes for an interesting around the table thing. And this all matters because unshared stories fade even after being rediscovered. We don't want these stories to fade. We want them to stay for people to enjoy, to learn more about their their ancestors to relate to their ancestors. Yesterday morning, I got to watch the Olympics, and I was thinking of, what a legacy these people have had. And they were talking about father and son. No, was that on that, or was that on a different thing? There was some sport event on I was watching yesterday, and they were talking about fathers and sons. And they had how this father had played the same sport that the son was now competing in. There's a legacy there. There's a how far back does that chain go? Is that part of you? Is there things like that in your family? Do you have any family members who have participated in some world competition, some Olympic sports, even if it's the local sport, the state, the area that you live in, even if it's just the area, the sports for that district or that region or that county or that state? Maybe they've gone to national level. I don't know. But do you have any stories in your family like that where somebody has competed in something? It doesn't have to be sports. It could be a spelling bee. It could be a debate team, where they have competed in something that you yourself are interested in, and you're curious as to how far back it goes. Find the newspaper articles, find the school records. It will all be in there. So your practical takeaway for today is shared stories in everyday language and repeat them often. Don't get all hoity-toity and do a PowerPoint presentation or a slide presentation. Put it on the big screen TV in the middle of the Super Bowl or something and try and get people interested in this. They're checking out. They're gone. You're going to become disowned by the entire family if you do something like that. So just pop it into casual conversation. Yeah. So share stories in everyday language and repeat them often. Want help presenting family stories? Send us a private message and let's set up a free, no obligation 30-minute discovery call so that we can get you on the path and give you some hints and tips to help you make those presentations even better, even though it's still going to be in a casual situation. It's not going to be in a formal presentation. And our closing thought for today is stories survive when they are spoken. So get out there, share your stories. Remember, keep it casual, keep it in plain English for them or whatever your language is. Just keep it simple. People like simple, but they like things that they can relate to. Is there something, right now we've got the Winter Olympics going on. Can you tie family into the Winter Olympics in any way, or even Summer Olympics? Super Bowl was on yesterday, day before. I was on a couple of days ago. Is there some way that you can relate a family story to a Super Bowl or a World Cup or a World Championships or something like that, or regional championships? Is there some way that you can relate to that particular sport in your family tree? Find ways to make connections with what's going on, what's currently going on, or what has gone on in the last five years. So find ways to bring connections into those. With that, we are out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening, and we will be back tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific time.